dawn, Dan and Harvey, who had been sleeping most of the day, tumbled out to cook fried pies. There was no reason why they should not have them taken them openly, but they tasted better so, and it made the cook angry. The heat and the smell below drove them on deck with their plunder.
The sea round about them clouded and darkened, and then frizzed up in showers of tiny silver fish. And over a space of 5 or 6 acres, the cod began to
right above the cap of the Virgin, and Harvey with them looked down on the very weed of that lonely rock, which rises to within 20 feet of the surface. The cod were there in legions, marching solemnly over the leathery kelp. When they bit all together, and so when they stopped.
In a minute half, the boats were out and bobbing on the Cockley swells, but Troop kept the weir hearers at work, dressing down.
"Cries, oh, haul!" shouted Dan. But the shout ended in a shrill, double shriek of horror, for out of the sea came the body of the dead Frenchman, buried 2 days before. The hook had caught him under the right armpit, and he swayed erect and horrible, head and shoulders above water. His arms were tied to his side, and he had no face. The boys fell over each other.
And it was heavenly to hear Disco and the others, all quite alive and solid, leaning over the rail and promising them a first-class pounding. But the cook was a black master of strategy. He did not get the dories aboard till he had given the more striking points of the tale, explaining as he backed and bumped around the counter how Harvey was the mascot
to their wives and womenfolk and owners, while the weir here finished the musical ride through the fleet, her head sails quivering like a man's hand when he raises it to say goodbye. Harvey very soon discovered that the weir here, with her riding sails strolling from earth.
Together to anyone who would listen. Hope she had none. Who could offer? All she needed was assurance that drowning did not hurt, and her husband watched to God lest she should make the experiment. Of this, his own sorrow, he spoke little. Hardly
she was to leave here Sunday at a time to connect with the New York route at 16th Street, Chicago, Tuesday next. Couldn't you better than that? Not on those rates. That gives them 60 hours from here to Chicago. They won't gain anything by taking the special east of that. Rain. Also arranged with Lake Shore and Michigan Southern to take Constance.
Miss Kinsey suggested, recovering herself. Yes, but this isn't Chauncey. It's chain. Lightning. It goes. Even so, guess we'd better wire the boy. You've forgotten that anyhow. I'll ask. When he returned with his father's message bidding Harvey meet them in Boston at an appointed hour, he found Miss Kinsey.
But I really don't think it is any good in putting on your bonnet and gloves yet. You'd much better lie down and take your medicine. And play you a game of dominoes, but it's Sunday.
They feasted the returned prodigal behind drawn curtains, cut off from their great happiness, while the trains roared in and around them. Harvey ate, drank, and enlarged on the adventures all in one breath, and when he had had a hand free, his mother fondled it. His voice was thickened with living in the open, salt air, his palms were rough and hard, his wrists dotted with the marks of gurry sores, and a fine, full flavor of codfish hung round rubber boots from blue jersey. The father, well used to judging men, looked at him keenly. He did not know what enduring
Flag flag still flying, all hands busy as beavers in the glorious morning light. Disco stood by the main hatch, superintending Manuel, Penn, and Uncle Salters at the tackle. Dan was swinging the loaded baskets inboard as Long Jack and Tom Platt filled them. And Harvey, with a notebook, represented the skipper's
I was mistook, Harv. I was mistook. Swiftly holding up a hand, I mistook in my judgments. You needn't rub it in anymore. Guess I'll take care of that, said Dan under his breath. You'll be going off now, won't you? Well, not without the balance of my wages, less than you want to have the weir here attached. That's so, I clean forgot, and he counted out the remaining dollars.
He came up, his kit in the handkerchief, and boarded the Constance. Pay was no particular object, and he did not in the least care where he slept. His business, as revealed to him in his dreams, was to follow Harvey for the rest of his days. They tried argument and at last persuasion. But there is a difference between one Cape Breton and 2 Alabama Negroes, and the matter was referred to Shane by the cook and porter.
Shane used the grade as an excuse for laying his hand on the boy's square shoulder. It was then that Harvey noticed and admired what had never struck him before: his father's curious power of getting at the heart of new matters as learned from men in the street. "How do you make him tell you everything without opening your head?" demanded the son, as they came out of a rigger's loft. "I've dealt with quite a few men in my time, Harv, and one sizes them up."
Father and son were very much alike, for the beard had hid Shane's mouth, and Harvey had his father's slightly aquiline nose, close-set black eyes, and narrow, high cheekbones. With a touch of brown paint, he would have made up very picturesquely as a Red Indian of the storybooks. "Now you can go on from here," said Shane.
"From cities that sprang up in a month, and in a season utterly withered away, to wild ventures and wild camps that are now laborious, paved municipalities. It covered the building of 3 railroads and the deliberate wreck of a 4th. It told of steamers."
Don't I know the look on men's faces when they think me a mucker, as they call it here? I can break them to little pieces, yes, but I can't back at them. I can't get back at them to hurt them where they live. I don't say they're way, way up, but I feel I'm way, way, way off somehow. Now you've got your chance. You've got to soak up all the learning that's around, and you'll live with the crowd that are doing the same thing. They'll be doing it for a few $1,000 a year.
As far as I can make out, this business is a sort of song and dance act, whacked up for the summer boarders. Disco don't think much of it, he says, because they take up a collection for the widows and the orphans. Disco's independent. Haven't you noticed that? Well, yes, a little, in spots. Is it a town show, then? The summer convention is. They read out the names of the fellows.
Shane had met him for 5 minutes a few days before, and between the two there was an entire understanding. "Well, Mr. Shane, and what do you think of our city?" "Yes, ma'am, you can sit wherever you please." You have this kind of prelude silenced him. "Our new organ," said the official.
"Damn clothes," Salters snarled. Then, "Shut your head, Salters," said Disco. "Your pile's gone back on you. Stay right where you are, Harv." Then up and spoke the orator of the occasion, another pillar of the municipality, bidding the world welcome to Gloucester, and incidentally pointing out wherein Gloucester excelled the rest of the world. Then he turned to the sea wealth of the city, and spoke of the price that must be paid for the yearly harvest.
Seems downright waste to me. Now, how in Jerusalem did Cap Bar Edwards strike adrift here? No keeping him wonder, said Newsportman behind. He's a poet, and he's bound to say his piece. Comes down our way, too. He did not say that Captain B. Edwards had striven for 5 consecutive years to be allowed to recite,
clasping and unclasping her hands. Miss Jane, who had been listening with wide-opened eyes, threw up her head and choked. Dan's mother, a few seats to the right, saw and heard and quickly moved to her side. The reading went on. By the time they reached the January and February
All feeling and a queer mixture of pride and sorrowfulness. Other people, summer boarders and such like, played about in catboats or looked at the sea from pier heads, but he understood things from the inside, more things than he could begin to think about. Nonetheless, he could have sat down and howled because the little schooner was going off. Mrs. Shane simply cried, and cried every step of the way. The end.
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 The end.